Discuss all of this, let's go to our guests. Here in the studio is Louay Safi, member of the Syrian National Council. Louay Safi here in the studio. We heard there the rather bleak words, 14 years that it took to reach a settlement in neighboring Lebanon. Do you think that there is any space whatsoever still for a diplomatic resolution to what is happening in Syria?
Well, I think the best solution is a political solution. And the only way for that to happen is for Russia to stop supporting the dictator, to say, all right, we are going to support transition, democratic transition, and Assad has to step down, step aside, because he has been the main impediment for any political solution.
Would you be prepared to engage in that kind of dialogue?
Well, the opposition wants one thing, transition to democracy. Anyone who can help in doing that, a genuine, real transition to democracy, the opposition is willing to talk with. And of course, the only condition is that these individuals should not be among those who have been directing the massacres and the killing in Syria. So it must be a respectable person, not outside the security apparatus.
But by that you are completely excluding the members of the present government of Syria, are you not?
Well, we will exclude for sure the chief of security in Syria and definitely the president. There's much of blood on the hands of Bashar al-Assad to be able to be part of negotiation. Over 20,000 Syrians have been killed using heavy bombardments.
It does appear that the possibility of this is very remote at the moment. If there's no preparedness from the opposition to talk to those in government, then where does it begin? Are you going to rely on some outside interlocutor to actually force through an agreement? Or is it going to be done on the ground? Is force now the dominant agent of change?
Well, the Syrian people are determined to change the government into a democratic one, to get rid of the current regime. Now it's all in the hands of Russia. If the Russians will take out their support for this particular person named Bashar al-Assad, then I think we can hope for a political solution. But the problem is that they are giving him more support, and he is using that support to kill people. And the more this war is prolonged, then I think we'll end up with the very scenario described by Dmitry. But if we can now stop it, and Russia can be a major player in stopping this war, then I think we could have a completely different outcome.
We've been talking here about the international community, what it can do or what it can't do, but surely in the end, the resolution has to be met by the parties within that country. In other words, a Syrian solution by Syrians themselves.
I agree with that. The problem is now, this kind of argument that the Russians are trying to negotiate peaceful settlements doesn't wash, because it is the support, continuous support in the Security Council and in constant supply of arms that is keeping the Assad government there. And so the Syrian people have become more convinced that now the blood in Syria, the responsibility for that blood shared by the Russian leadership. And I hope, I have true hope that the people there recalculate, their interest. The long-term interest is with the Syrian people and with the people in the region, not with the Assad himself. And I don't know why they are stuck with that guy who has shown repeatedly that he is not serious about anything, including peaceful resolution.
And yet, while this debate, this discussion, this argument continues, and while people continue to die on the ground in Syria, you also have a scenario emerging where the opposition is beginning to splinter. There are signs of division among the opposition itself. The longest this crisis lasts, the longer it lasts, then perhaps the less likelihood that of an opposition that remains united, which multiplies the problems in any post-Assad government that may emerge. So is there not a duty on the opposition to actually engage, to find some way to break this stalemate, as much there's an obligation on the Syrian government?
The opposition wanted from day one. There was no talk about regime change. We wanted reform. But that person the Bashar al-Assad continued killing, people who were demonstrating peacefully. There were no arms at the beginning, but he kept killing, sending his gangs, raping women, and that in Syria is big thing. Really, this part of the Council of Honor that can stir a lot of troubles. And so ultimately, people took up arms. Still, the war is imbalanced. I mean, you have here tanks and MiG, you know, the fighter jets from Russia used to bombard cities, and then the Free Syrian Army is armed with very, you know, light weapons taken mainly from the Syrian army. So I think something has to happen. The international community has to step in to make sure that, you know, the bloodshed will not continue, because it can continue. It will continue for years. But definitely the price could be very high, and then the Russians will have to deal with that squarely.
Is the struggle in threat of being taken over by outside elements?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And this is part of the propaganda that is put out by the Syrian regime, supported by the Russians particularly. Is very sad, because the Syrian people have been left alone. Anyone who have been watching closely what's happening in Syria would realize that this is a popular, uprising. People want freedom, and this regime really cannot rule anymore after bombarding cities with artilleries, with jet fighters, with rockets. So I think this is going to go until the end.
Well, that brings us to the end of this particular discussion. My thanks to our guests, Louay, Safi here in Doha in the studio.